Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges, as he explores turning the page on his life and yours.
Welcome, friends, to the next chapter with Charlie. Our guest today, Devon Chatterton, told me this: I worship at the altar of empathy, and I do not dismiss anyone. Devon believes, obviously, in a kind of empathy that is restricted by no boundaries. And that will be among the many topics that Devin and I discuss today. Just a bit on Devon. She earned her degree in law at Georgetown, is now deeply devoted attorney to working with immigrants attempting to obtain some kind of legal status in the United States. Let's bring her on the show. Devon Chatterton, it's such a delight to have you here with me on the next chapter.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, good. I always tell guests you say that now. You haven't had enough time chat. Well, you've had enough time chatting with me, believe me. You know, I was going to tell our guests. So I have known you since childhood. Well, since your childhood, not mine. It wasn't a co-childhood. Where we together spent more than half the weekend of each year at youth and baseball tournaments. So, you know, I know what your brother and your dad were doing because your dad and I coached this team. I know what we were doing on the baseball field. What the hell was that time like? You as what did it start? What were you, like 10 years old when it started?
Yeah, I think my brother was about 8 on that first team that they got together. So yeah, I would be around 9 or maybe 10. Those weekends were a lot of homework for me. It was a lot of reading, a lot of
at 10 years old.
Yeah. I was always an avid reader, so I would definitely always bring books. And, this was not an average travel ball team, I would say. There was rarely a tournament where we did not make it to the last game on a Sunday, staying there till like 9 p.m. So I had to make sure.
I know Friday night, wasn't it a Friday night game? 2 games on Saturday and then 2 games on Sunday.
Exactly. So I had to make sure I had enough to entertain myself. And then also I was always responsible for my little sister. So, Drew and I would always go to either a park that was nearby. If we didn't have a park, I would bring a deck of cards. I felt like I was always not only entertaining myself, but entertaining her. It's where, of course, my brother and your son grew up, but it's also where Drew and I grew up as well.
Oh, you did. I just imagine, what a 10-year-old is doing. I mean, and it's, if it's like a tournament a month or a tournament every 2 months, but it was like every other week almost we were in a tournament. And I remember one time there was a track where out of 33 tournaments, we reached the final game 27 times.
Yeah.
So there was only 6 tournaments out of the ones we faced that we weren't in the final game. We were kind of like the best team in California and Orange County and the country. We won a national championship. But it was just, what you guys did during that was amazing. Did your heart for empathy, did any of that even ring true? Was there any place, that you noticed in crowd or, you noticed in parents or anybody that you would have to switch on your empathy button to understand the sometimes jerks, which we didn't keep long on the team. We didn't keep those kind of people. They didn't last on the team. They had bad parents.
Yeah. I don't think I had a lot of experience or interaction with like the players or the parents. A lot of the time that I spent honestly was, so I would not only watch my own sister, but I would watch other people's little sisters or brothers.
You were the oldest, weren't you?
Yeah.
Because you were a year older than everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was the oldest. And then a lot of the kids were around, 5, 6, even. I think my sister probably would have been about 4, or maybe around 5. So yeah, I don't know necessarily about empathy, but I think I definitely took over somewhat of a parental stand-in for everyone. I remember regularly like getting groups of kids together of like, okay, we're all going to go to the park and we're going to play this game that I just made up on the top of my head. And, trying to create another world of fun and attention for kids where, all the other fun and attention that was in their life at the time was usually focused on their brothers that were playing. So I tried to create some sort of an environment that was like fun and exciting and, kind of like a de facto team babysitter for a lot of these games.
Did that sort of generated or tapped into a leadership quality? Have you ever thought of it that way, that was a first expression, an opportunity to express your leadership and your ability to take responsibility and guide people and keep people happy and in control?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I think even at a young age, like I said, this was happening through the years of me being 10 to probably 14 maybe. So, as I'm also developing my own sense of self and how I view myself in the world, I guess I was really developing a lot of empathy and understanding about each child and what they kind of needed in those moments and I became very attuned to what types of games would work well, what types of games could sustain us for a whole baseball game, what kinds of activities could sustain us for a whole baseball game versus, just letting everyone kind of do whatever. I was more so catering to the different personalities that were there. I think you could possibly call every older sibling, the first job you have really is an older sibling. I think that is put upon a lot of older siblings, and it definitely was placed upon me at a young age. And so I think I just sort of expanded that to include a lot of the other siblings that were on the team.
Except, did anybody compensate you for that?
No. It's not.
No one even realized what you were doing. They just thought you were keeping yourself busy. They didn't realize you're taking care of their kid.
Yeah, I did.
Because they're so into the damn game.
Yeah, I did get a lot of thank yous. And I think, a lot of parents were very appreciative of it. But yeah, definitely no financial compensation.
So earlier I quoted you in our conversation. You said that you worship at the altar of empathy, which dismisses no one. As we're going to find out in this conversation right here, such thinking challenges the positions of many, and I'm going to guess, if not most Americans. It's a bunch of people, whatever that number is, it's a bunch of people. But you also said another really powerful observation, and that the demise of this country will be the loss of empathy. Talk about those ideas to me, because, they're just, when you talk about empathy, it's a whole different game than most people talk about.
Yeah, so I don't, like exactly as you quoted me saying, I don't have a lack of empathy for anyone. And I think oftentimes that does put me at odds with a lot of people's perceptions of others. I think there are a lot of marginalized groups that have a very difficult time receiving empathy from others, specifically people who are incarcerated, immigrants, people who are in poverty, people who rely on the government for assistance, people with mental health struggles. And for essentially all of those groups, I have worked or volunteered with. I volunteered for years in my undergrad at San Quentin, and I taught classes on reentry. So it was for people who are incarcerated for life. And for life is kind of a term that is just an indefinite sentence. So eventually they were released on parole. And once they had that release date, I would help facilitate classes that kind of showed them the basic life skills of, when to use email versus when to text, and how to navigate a computer, how to build a resume, how to address, certain questions in job interviews that you're bound to get. And so I think a lot of my experience has been driven by empathy, and it has allowed me to really open my mind up to a lot of situations that I have never experienced firsthand. And, even without these opportunities, whether they're volunteering or, paid positions with these populations, I think there are also populations that I've never worked with that I still have a lot of empathy for. And I think the foundation of the country, if I were to guess, a lot of it was based in empathy. A lot of people fled whatever situation they were in prior and thought that this was a better area to raise a family. This was a better way to have a more, a happier life, an easier life. And, America has always been sort of like a melting pot of all religions and races and everything like that. And I think it has been relatively successful because of the empathy that has been shown toward groups that come into the United States. And I think, as much as empathy does unite people, there's also a way that people can be united by a common hatred. And I think that has been sort of exploited in the last couple of decades, especially with media becoming like as prevalent as it is, like the whole 24-hour news cycle. There's a lot of different ways in which people have really latched onto this idea of a common enemy or a reason to blame others for situations that are happening in your life or situations that, you see on a daily basis. And I really think that this will be, and I really think that it is honestly the reason why so many people are dissatisfied with the United States, whether you think that it was
so many people
great,
in the country or outside the country.
Within the country, I think there's a lot of people, like whatever political ideations like you believe in or you subscribe to, I think a lot of people are generally dissatisfied. A lot of people have wanted a lot of change, again, whether left or right or moderate.
Right.
And I think, it's going to be very difficult to try to improve our country or look forward without having empathy for everyone that is within the country. And so, I just think that truly the demise of our country will be the lack of empathy for others. I think it leads to a lot of just harsh realities that we don't necessarily need, and they just happen because of the lack of empathy.
What's occurring to me is the lack of empathy really is a genesis of judgment. And I just wrote a blog a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that with judgment comes separation. You cannot judge something unless you intend to improve it and do something to actually help it. Then that's different. That's different. It's a sort of judgment than saying, I need to serve. I'm judging a situation, I need to serve. But if you're judging as we the log in your eye type Jesus type analysis of judgment, it is separating. And I'm thinking, Devin, I'm thinking when I wasn't in the Christian environment until I was 30 years old. And I was in a sort of in between, sort of more conservative church, but a very open church. But then I went to a conservative graduate school. I went to a conservative seminary, and as a matter of fact, they had conservative in its name, Western Conservative Baptist. Like, duh. You could just put Western. They did change it to Western Baptist, and then, because kind of redundant. But one of the, I walked away evaluating that. I mean, I didn't walk away from it. I needed some other kind of worship, and I liked liturgical worship. I liked the Anglican high church kind of, I'm right next to Catholic. I'm a Catholic wannabe. But you know what? There were two things that I noticed that made the church big. One, we will show you the right way to live or a good way to live so you can prosper. But also, we also have an enemy. And we are, and you know, that just, it just comes to your idea of enemy, that empathy, you can't have empathy if you have enemies.
Yeah.
And you know who the enemy was in the conservative church? I mean, this was the large conservative church, the big, large, not just Western Baptist. But you know who the enemy was?
No.
Who would you guess?
I mean, I guess like the devil or Satan?
No.
I don't know.
That would be too simple. The most obvious, people that don't agree with us.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's easy.
That is the enemy. And so it is not other non-Christians. The non-Christians are not the enemy. Oh, we love you. We want you in. Come and bring your stuff in. Let us change you. And no, it was the other Christians that didn't agree with him. They are the enemy. They're spreading lies about the faith. And so that was a strong area of growth. I mean, that really coagulated people, that since we have an enemy, we've got to stick together. We've got to be
a very powerful tool.
Yeah. But you can't have empathy when you're doing that.
Right. Right.
Now, you also believe, so, I mean, I don't think the difficult thing, I don't think there's difficulty in the homeless, and that, I think a lot of people are understanding the homeless. There are people who say, just get a fucking job, well, of course. That's my whole desire. That's my goal in life, give me a job and I'll shut up. If I could, do you think I want to live in this car with my kids or, doing, and so I think they're kind of in the minority, but knowing what it's still, we don't want to accept this number of people that are making my, it's the NIMBY thing. You can be homeless, but not in my backyard.
Yeah, exactly.
You can be homeless in Garden Grove's backyard.
Okay.
Which is your town. Or your hometown, not your town now, but that's your hometown. What do you think?
Okay, this is just based off of my own lived experience. I genuinely think that the minority is not people who are understanding of those who are suffering through periods of homelessness. I genuinely think that a lot of people have a very difficult time accepting or having empathy for those who are homeless. And a lot of people sort of establish this within that, or they have, this conviction because they think of these sort of outdated or not exactly backed by facts, these truths, which are, or these like stereotypes, which are, people who are homeless, they should just get a job, number one. And then I always try to think of, okay, well, if I'm a hiring manager or I'm hiring someone and there's someone who's dressed nicely, has a good resume, comes in on time, answers all the questions, and then someone who is more disheveled, someone who maybe hasn't showered in a while, someone who maybe also has the same background, but isn't as aesthetically pleasing, human nature is not going to give that person the job.
Yeah,
so
they don't even have a chance.
Yeah, so it's not as easy as, just go get a job. It's very, very difficult. In addition, I think there's a lot of people that rely on the trope of, those who are homeless are, they are addicted to drugs or they chose this or what have you. I don't think anyone would choose to live on the street. I think addiction is a disease. And I think there's a lot of people that do drugs in very nice houses. There's a lot of people that have very high paying jobs that do a lot of substances. And for some reason, the outrage doesn't occur when they are doing it. The outrage only occurs when people in poverty or people who are homeless are doing it. And so I think it's just, just from having conversations with people, throughout my life, I think the vast majority of people want to believe, yes, I would support, and I want to get homeless people off the streets. I think everyone should deserve housing. However, and they'll say they will add, a little bit more of what they require, which is they shouldn't be doing drugs. They shouldn't, be having children, or they shouldn't be relying on.
They shouldn't be having children.
Whatever.
Yeah, like they're going to be able to afford birth control.
Right.
And doctor's care.
Yeah. And I just think a lot of it, number one, lacks empathy and lacks the logic of really thinking of what you would do in that situation. And also a lot of it is just hypocritical. It is rare to find someone at my age who has never drank too much or done drugs or experimented in some way, or let's say got fired from a job, or, lost their internship for something, whatever might happen. We all go through, slip ups. And to judge someone for maybe having a more difficult time getting past that slip up is really, I just find it hard to believe that so many people who have these ideas, I almost want to like turn the mirror to face them and say like, well, you not an hour prior were telling me a funny anecdote about being in college and, trying this drug and da da da. If you think it's so bad, it's obviously hypocritical. You've done it already. So, I think, like I would love to believe that a lot of people have more empathy, specifically for homeless populations. I just see it play out, especially in like elections, especially where people want their tax dollars going, people donating and, volunteering. It's just not a high priority for a lot of people, which it doesn't necessarily have to be, but it also shouldn't be something that's so harshly judged either, I think.
That's fascinating. So, all I have to do is you bring up subjects that, people think my life is a wide open book, but if you really knew, I'm an addict, and I'm an alcoholic, and, I like drugs and alcohol. And I frequently say, and I think this has to do with homeless and drug addicts, that we're all the same way. We don't take our first drink or two to get high. We take it to get normal. It's quieting the noise, quieting the demons, because we have these internal demons that are not just alcoholic or drug addicted demons. They are stuff for a psychiatrist or a therapist. They're the kind of demons that, I went to my therapist this week, and I've been going to this same guy for probably 20 years, and I've been in therapy for 30 since I'm 40 years old. So 35 years I've been in therapy, but I go once a week. No, once a month. I don't go once a week, because now I'm at once a month.
Yeah.
But sometimes I wonder why I'm going, and sometimes I think it's just I'm paying for a really super intelligent friend. But this guy knows me so well, and if I did not have the resources to pay for that, how am I dealing with those?
Yeah. Exactly.
My wife Pam, what is she going to do?
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of answered that, right? You self-medicate. You find anything that can help you relieve whatever problem or alleviate some sort of problem that you're having, or feelings that you're feeling, or whatever is happening. And there are a lot of substances that can offer these interesting, like short-term benefits for that. It's a very common thing. And I've worked very closely defending immigrants who have mental health issues, and the vast majority of them come to the attention of ICE because of substance issues. A lot of them are arrested or convicted of possession. They'll be convicted of whatever it may be related to drug and alcohol, and then that's how they come to the attention of ICE. So yeah, it's a very common thing.
So tell me about your work with immigrants, because you work with, I mean, that is sort of, we've talked about homeless, we've talked about people in need, about disregarded people, but you've got a special place in your heart, it seems, for the immigrant. And your love is, there is no distinction of immigrant. There is no distinction of the immigrant that should be accepted and the immigrant that could be rejected, like jailed people and drug people and people with convictions. You think there's zero. You dismiss no one.
Yeah.
That's radical.
Yes. Yes. And I do understand that. Like that is, it's difficult outside of my profession to find a lot of people that agree with me off the bat, which I totally understand.
But tell me about your experience with immigrants and what does the average listener to my show need to know about immigrants that you know from experience, from day to day to day to day to day experience?
Yeah. I think a lot of people maybe don't understand. I think they have a notion of it. The idea that, or I guess the idea of how difficult it is to move either yourself or your entire family to another country, often through many different countries, to get to a place where you think is safe and can provide you protection and can ideally increase the value of your life and the happiness that you feel, the comfort that you have in your life. I think a lot of people obviously understand that. I don't think they're confused by why people are trying to come to the United States, but I don't think they're logically thinking that through. Let's say you needed to, let's reverse it. Let's say like we, for some reason, needed to move to Honduras. We had to move there. That was the safe place to be. The United States was no longer safe. The amount of not only time and energy and money and all of these resources that you would need, especially if you had a family, especially if you have young children, like all of that is necessary for you to even begin this journey, a journey that you're not even sure will end you up in the place that you're supposed to be, in a safe home, in a safe place. That is so astronomical that I don't think people have thought that through. I don't think people really understand all that is going into that. And then on top of that, that's just logistics. That's just facts. On top of that, the emotional toll that it takes to leave everything you've known behind, leave possibly the only neighborhood you've ever lived in. If you're Indigenous, sometimes we have clients who, speak different dialects and different languages that are very difficult to find an interpreter for. And so you're traveling through countries that you don't.
So Mexicans that could speak an Indian dialect, I mean, a native Mexican dialect.
A lot. Yeah.
Or
so
native Latin American.
Yes, that's correct. And so, you're making this really dangerous journey. You're making it after possibly and most likely some sort of trauma has happened to you or your family or in your neighborhood. Again, you don't speak the language. You have to care for your children. You have to figure out how to feed them and clothe them. And, you're still at the end of the day, like a mom or a dad or a brother or a sister, you're trying to make the best out of this journey. You possibly get there and you're treated horribly. You are looked down upon, you're laughed at, you're, just trying to find a safe place to live for you or your family. And I think a lot of people just, the way that immigration cycles through our media and our news, I think it has become very normalized that this happens, but I don't think people quite realize and quite go through the logical steps of everything that a person has had to do and overcome to even arrive at the border. I think they just take for granted, oh yeah, there's tons of people that are coming to the border all the time. And while that's true, each of them has their individual reason for why they felt there was no option but to come to the border. There was no option to stay where they were. This was the only thing they could do for their safety. And I don't think that gets focused on enough.
especially in the right-wing media,
Correct.
which I must admit I listen to more than I listen. I read daily The Independents, Free Press, and Axios News. I read them every day. But then I will listen to far right more than I'll listen to far left, because they're both, to me, they're both doing the same message from different spins, and neither area is true journalism. They're about evangelism, not journalism. They're trying to win you over to their case, win you over to their cause. Is like to me the function of Fox News or CNN or MSNBC. They're trying to win you over to what they're about. And the right-wing media will not let you. It doesn't promote any thinking like what you've just described. What do we have coming over according to the right-wing media? We have rapists and gang members. Mm-hmm. And then we have stories of rapists and gang members. So an illegal rapes somebody, and so that becomes the prime story, and it just becomes one anecdote. And I hate anecdotal logic, because it never works, because it's always some strange anecdote. But that is all we get. So we don't think about people coming over. I look at it even more simplistically, but I think, the way you put it about safety. But even if it's not about safety, it's just about what about just being fed? I'm just hungry. I can't live. It is not a safe place. This is not a good place. I need to come where I can find work. And we talk about the unemployment of immigrants, but that is certainly not their desire. I mean, I have befriended so many people in restaurants. There's so many service people, and then I just took from my favorite restaurant. I go to Zove's in Tustin.
I don't.
Zove's is kind of a Greek Mediterranean restaurant. They have a cafe on the side that's not so much Greek. It's just oatmeal brulee and eggs. And I go there, and I took. He's probably close to 40 years old. He's a busboy, but I hate to call it a busboy, because he picks up after, he picks up all the dishes afterward. And this is his job, and he's been there for years. And, Luis is just this great guy, and he and I have become buddies. And he's a huge Angel fan. And so when Austin was in town and the Guardians were playing the Angels, and I could get tickets, I took him and his wife and his son to a baseball game, because it's just everyday, regular people. And, I don't even think of them as one time being immigrants. I just think of them as human beings, living, surviving, happy to work. We de-empathize it. It's a loss of empathy. As you and I were talking, I personalize. I think of the need of the person. And as soon as I can personalize and I can identify with the personness, that changes my whole view of immigration, of an immigrant, not of immigration, but of an immigrant.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of how I am with a lot of different marginalized groups. I think, there's something to be said about taking the time to think about their lived experience and hear their lived experience, and not interject and say, well, I haven't been treated that way, or I've never gone through anything like that. I think there's so many marginalized groups that get lumped together, and it's so easy. It's such a byproduct of human nature for us to categorize things. It's so easy for us to just lump all similar things into one and assume that everyone has had that experience. Everyone is like this, when in fact we are so different. I mean, humanity in general, like we are so different from our neighbors. We are so different from everyone else. And at the same time, there's so much that like unites us, but something that unites us is our differences. I think it's beautiful that everyone is so unique. And similar to that, like every immigrant is unique. Every person experiencing homelessness is unique. Every person who's sitting right now inside a jail or prison cell is unique. So yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult for me to not empathize with that and not want to hear what their life was like.
Yeah, because, and then when you view them not as a class, such as immigrant or homeless or indigenous or whatever, but you understand them, see them as a person, it changes everything. It just changes everything. I used to say back in what decade would it have been, Devin? In the 90s. I went to a seminary that was, very conservative, and it had strong pro-life. It was strongly anti-abortion. And I used to think to myself, until, and this is theologically, and had to do with abortion, it had to do with so many interpersonal laws about human beings, is your theology sucks until you can put a face on it. If you can't put a face on it, and, God had a face on every bit of theology. It wasn't just this law outside of life. It was they were laws of part of life, and there were in my view of the law, of the biblical law, they're all paths to love. This is what brings about love and sets us in a situation of love. So when we humanize deviants or unaccepted, like my friend Luis is not a deviant, he's just unaccepted, and I don't even know. I think he probably was, he probably crossed the border, but I don't know, and I could care less, but he's just a cool human being. It's not like I'd be with him because, oh God, I'm friends with a poor person. It's not that. It's just that, I want to be friends with a poor person. He was great, but we need to look at them as human beings. So let's go even deeper.
Okay.
This is really cool. This is really, I like your radical thinking. You have got me thinking about all of this, and I can have a proclivity to not dismiss anyone. I'm not a dismisser. And so I may dismiss a person I have yet to put a face on. I may dismiss a category of people, but as soon as I humanize them, I can no longer dismiss them. I can no longer dismiss them. But that's because as a child, I was raised, my early childhood, my formation, my formative years were rooted in rejection and abandonment. And so it's really funny. The other day I was thinking of love, and I was thinking, what's the first descriptor I would put of love? What adjective would be first that I'm thinking of love? My very first adjective, Devin, was acceptance. Well, what is that talking about? The rejected and abandoned child. That is going back to now. So I have an excuse for my empathetic pathologies, but you have no excuse. We talked a bit about that. Where the hell did this come from? Because you were raised in like I know there are demons in your family, but I don't know what they are because you were raised to me like by the perfect parents. Dolly and Tom are the incredible people on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been extremely fortunate. Yeah, my parents are wonderful, wonderful people. At their core, they also are wonderful parents. They also have been together since they were 14, so their bond is like very unlike a lot of other married couples that I know. But yeah, I've been very fortunate. I've been very privileged. I don't think my childhood was like lavish. I don't think we were like upper class or anything like that, but I was always very safe. I always felt protected. I always felt comfortable and cared for and loved. And I never questioned that. I think maybe perhaps growing up in an environment like that allows you so starkly to recognize the differences in other people's upbringing. And it allowed me to very quickly identify the gaps in other friends I had, or whether it be like cousins I had, just, going over to their house to play or seeing what their home looked like, hearing their mom speak to them, hearing their parents speak to each other. I think you learn a lot at a young age when you start socializing with other people in their private environments. And that, of course, gets more and more common as you grow older. You have like sleepovers and summer camp, and, you're around people more intimately. And so, yeah, I think in my case, I think a lot of my privilege, honestly, was a lens with which to view others, maybe shortcomings or things that different adversities that they were facing. And so that kind of...
Without being judgmental. See, that's weird. I mean, that's flat weird, Debbie, because most people would look at that judgmentally. Why are you doing this? What's wrong with you?
I think I started that way, though. I think when I was in high school, I definitely was very judgmental. I, saw again, like the adversities that other people had to go through. And instead of, I of course would empathize, if my friends were dealing with something their parents were doing, I would empathize with my friends, of course, but then kind of judge their parents and think like, why can't, like, what is wrong with you? Or why are you putting your children through this, or what have you? And I think once I got older, as I've aged, I have just expanded my empathy. It's not, in my opinion, it's not true empathy if you only give it to a specific selection of people. You're not actually nice if you're only nice to a very, very small percentage of people surrounding you. So it has to be really explored, and it has to be given to everyone. So as much as I'm empathetic for people who suffer at the hands of others, I also need to be empathetic, in my opinion, I also need to be empathetic for the people who are inflicting suffering on other people. And I think, there's so much to be said about like nature versus nurture, but you can always go back so far in someone's lineage or history or how they were raised or whatever, and kind of put together some pieces of the puzzle as to why they ended up this way, why maybe some of their decisions went a certain way. And so, yeah, I think I have just over time developed a larger sense of empathy and less judgment for people. But it definitely didn't start as just me being like, non-judgmental at a young age.
Are you, you don't want to use the safe word and say religious, but do you consider yourself a Christian woman? That's a driver for you?
I don't necessarily.
Because the reason I'm asking, because you're talking like Jesus. I mean, really, the way you talk about empathy is the way Jesus talks about love. And the way you talk about non-judgment is the same way Jesus talks about non-judgment. And the same way about distinguishing between your friends and the rich and ignoring the poor. That's all so Jesus. That is just, so that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, I'm not. I've struggled a lot with my faith as I got older, as from college and beyond. And I'm Yeah, I don't think I don't subscribe to any religion, and I am regularly questioning whether I believe in a higher power. I think it's something that I need to invest a significant amount of time that I haven't in it.
Yeah, what would be alternatives? I mean, to other than I mean, I'm not talking about, because I'm with you on religion. I mean, I think religion is just messed up everything. But, there is something about the deep down core of, for me, the Jesus message, the Gandhi message, the Mandela message, that are all very, they're all very similar. What alternative if you don't, I mean, and there's a creator that creates everything in love and for love, but out of love creates free will and allows the crappiness of humanity without being, because a divinity could come in and authoritatively dictate what is to happen, but chooses to let it be. What's the alternative to? I mean, how do we even have this existence, this consciousness, without a higher power?
I think that it just comes down to chance and science and happenstance. I think I truly do. I truly do, to my core. I really
Oh
believe
my
that
God,
it is
really?
such
That it's all, that the whole planet, everything on it, empathy,
Yeah.
everything is all chance.
Yeah, I really do think that
Unreal.
that is the magic of life. I think that's the beauty in us being alive at the same time, and it's hard for me to, I struggle with having faith that there is a higher power. And I think it makes me feel sometimes more comforted that there's not, and that it just is what it is at the end of, like, there is no higher explanation other than, different happenstance and just life being created at a weird mix of temperatures and molecules and cellular growth, and that's it. And it's so beautiful that it has created this. And we are so infinitely lucky to experience this, but that's it. It's luck. That's what I believe. Although I do know a lot of people that believe that and also are religious. There's so many, again,
because I'm not disagreeing with the damn word you said. I don't just, and with the luck thing, I get it. It is so magical and so mysterious. Where do you go to? But that goes to, to me, it just adds on to the beauty of a creator.
Right. And I see that. I do. I just haven't yet. I struggle with having faith that is what it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but that's a weird word. I think I would remove that from my vocabulary.
Faith?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's how do you define it? Because what's the difference between, because it really is a derivative of belief. And what do you believe? But somehow faith is so much, belief. Yeah, I can believe. I believe it. Do I have faith in this? Like, because faith, all of a sudden, the way we use it, comes with a larger field of meaning than belief. And so maybe if you don't have faith, you just believe that, there's something out there that I don't get, that put this together and allows me and freely enjoys me thinking the way I'm thinking right now. It is actually getting pleasure with me enjoying my creation, and yet it's having a hard time understanding what I'm all about and doing it. Well, if you don't have a hard time understanding, you're not really thinking about it. But
Yeah.
I love a thing that Bible people misquote. I mean, when I say everyone, Devin, I mean everyone. I just heard a man that I respect as a biblical interpreter speaking, and he quoted it poorly. And it has to do with creation. And creation is, you have to understand this creator. I mean, if you, no, you don't have to understand, but understand my position. What I think, this creator is so magnificent and is an artist and so filled with beauty and love and growth and all of these wonderful things of life that the creator then decides. I mean, I'm writing a book now that I threatened to write this book on the Trinity called The History of Love. Before the beginning, there was love. And so that is the one thing that everything is founded on love. And so this creator, after 6 days of creation, the seventh day took a nap. But on the 6 days of creation, after every one, there is a statement that every single preacher, Bible person in the world said, and God said it was good. And each day, and God said it was good. And on the last day after the creation of human being, of woman and man, God said it was very good. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. That is not what is in the Bible. Go to your Bible. I tell everyone listening, go to your Bible and look and see what the hell it says. And it will tell you, because it does. I see where they get that, but it's wrong. You know what the Bible says? Because this is an artist. This is a creator. This truly is it's a beauty. It's a magician that's working all of this together. And do you know what it says, Devin? Of course not, because you've never been told. And God saw that it was good. That is very different than a proclamation.
Yes.
See, it's sort of like a proclamation is sort of the godliness. That comes from our post-Constantinian thought of, the power of God over everything. And God said it was good, so damn it, this is good. No. And God saw it was good. God saw all the beauty that God had put together in it, and God it's as if God said, "Damn, look at what I just did. That's pretty bitchin'," And he says that after every day, and God saw when the man and the woman were created, and God saw that it was very good. I mean, you see the difference?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the beauty.
One is more rooted in ego and proclamation, and another is rooted in just observation.
And passion. And passion. And I might add, and great empathy.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked how you said that. I think you were talking about your book, and you said that love was at the beginning.
Before the beginning, there was love.
Yeah. And I think, even though your book probably has I guess not faith, but a religious or
well, it's about the Trinity,
divine.
But there's not much in the Bible about Trinity, so I have to take it from theologians.
But I think that's a good concept for even those who are not maybe very religious at all. At the end of the day, and truly at the beginning, before everything, like, there should be love, and we should aspire to hold that, in a very high regard. And I think a lot of empathy is love. It's love for someone else.
Yeah, and it's love. It's love for the despondent. Empathy is love for everyone, because we're going to be empathetic, not just to the despondent, to the immigrant, to the people who don't have, but just to friends. And you were talking about people that do bad things or do something difficult, like a parent does, can say something to a child, or, we can say something to a store. And so something to someone in a store somewhere, talk negatively, it's always talking about rarities or talking directly to them, unless you're a Democrat. I'm teasing you.
I'll let it slide.
What's that?
I said, I'll let it slide.
Oh, for now. Next time when we get off the air, you won't let it slide. You'll come and get me. But it's not, why did they do that? It is kind of like, it's not, how could they possibly do something like that? The better question is, what happened to them that brought them to this place?
Yeah.
What happened to that person that made them so judgmental?
Yeah.
Devin, we could go on to another topic, but we're sneaking in on an hour.
Okay, up to you.
I told you this would go quickly. Did this go quickly for you?
Yes, very fast.
Yeah. I can't wait for us to have more chats personally. You were such a cool person, Devon Chatterton.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Yeah, of course.
This is going to be a highlight. This is going to be a good show. I can tell. I get a feel when they're good. Do you get a feel like it worked?
I feel like it worked, but again, I'm not the podcast host. I don't know. So I hope it worked.
Just because I'm a host doesn't mean I know. I can't tell you how many shows I thought were really good, and I go back and listen to them. I go, oh, God, I can't even listen because I can't stand to listen to myself. So that's why I try to talk less. I didn't mean to talk as much as I did about theology, so forgive me.
No, I enjoyed it.
Okay, buddy. We'll chat. So, and I also want to thank everyone for tuning in to the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.